Alright, so our hangout is now live. Just going to start with introductions. The three of us have been in chats together before, but just a reminder to anyone who views this. I'm Virginia Doe. I am a second-year master's student at Miami University, and I have an assistantship in the Office of Community Engagement and Service. Popcorn Peter.
All right. Hi, my name is Peter Lim Tong Virat, and I am the coordinator for social justice education at Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis. Of course, Stephen.
And I am Stephen Dederick. I am a second-year PhD student in higher education and student affairs at Ohio State, and also have an assistantship in the Multicultural Center.
All right. Cool. Thank you. So there have been, I know we have an agenda, and since there are three of us, I wanted to see if you all wanted to take some time to talk about the events in Mizzou. I know that's a lot, and sometimes it's heavy. So what do you all think? Do you want to talk to our book club first and then talk about Mizzou, or maybe talk about Mizzou and then the book club, or just book club?
I think we could start with the Mizzou stuff, probably.
Sounds good. I can go either way.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I don't really have any, agenda. Does anyone have any, thoughts they want to share? Any, pressing things in which, you've been thinking about? Yeah, anyone want to start?
I feel like I have a lot of thoughts that are all over the place, that are sometimes conflicting, that are sometimes things people will agree with and maybe won't agree with. I think overall I'm wondering how we engage everyone in what's happening, because I think that there are students, I think that there are non-black students who don't know how to enter the conversation and don't know what their position is, don't know how to be an ally outside of posting a Facebook status, and are worried about saying the wrong thing, and are worried about being yelled at, perhaps, because I think that the point that we've gotten to at this time is a heightened level of emotion around these issues at a lot of institutions, that I think that some of the non-black students feel like that's not creating a space for dialogue and for listening when they see the high level of emotion that is being portrayed in a lot of these necessary confrontations to the administration. So it's, yeah, I think I'm struggling with finding the balance of you go, students, because that is needed. You do have to make a list of demands at some point, but also how are we building coalitions and allowing other students to join that too?
Yeah, definitely. I agree in terms of a lot of times we see things as black or white. And so where do other races and other students, have a part in that? And how do we encourage people to, to have a space to engage in dialogue, engage in, activism or anything? It's tough.
Yeah, I totally agree, and it's such a tough thing to do. And when I was reflecting on Mizzou, I was really drawing upon my own personal experiences and how I see how I saw like activism and like student movements kind of occur, where and like when I first started entering those spaces and becoming more engaged and aware, I noticed that I was usually like one of three Asian Americans, like very few Asian Americans. I was like one of the very few. And I remember talking to my friends, because I was engaged. I was part of Thai Club or the Pan Asian American organization, and there was just so much apathy of why does this affect me, or like this doesn't affect me. Why should I care? And I think that's another level of, in addition, like I think this is another level of the difficulty in having dialogues. In addition to like fear, I feel like there's a lot that people just don't know or just don't like recognize why it's a problem, and it's definitely like across like many racial lines. Like just one last example earlier, there was a demonstration for Palestine, and I heard conversations. A student talked to me about how black students didn't understand why it was important to support the Palestinian die-in, and so it's coalition building. Stephen, you're on point on that. Like I think we need to work on how do we teach students the importance of coalition building. So those are my thoughts. I don't have an answer. But yeah.
I think it's tough because like a lot of like for me as an Asian, it was the like I bought into the model minority myth of like, well, I'm doing okay, like why does this concern me? And it's really tough to break that, to unlearn that, to say like, well, it does concern me, because we're all connected. Yeah, those are my another 2 cents.
Yeah.
And I think that to tie it to like the API community especially, I think we've talked about this on a previous book club of being left out of the conversation, and I think that in a lot of people are using black and people of color interchangeably right now, but I think that in anyone's definition of people of color, that doesn't mean Asian on a lot of campuses, even if they mean that to include Latino or Native American students as well. And so it's how are we helping our students fit into that too? It's just it seems like a complicated conversation of if the list of demands includes asking for a cultural space for black students, let's say, like what does that mean for API students?
So I have a question for both of you. So this inclusion of Asian APIs in people of color. Have you seen API students not feeling that way? Because I've heard in the past students not thinking that they are also people of color.
So I have a personal example. I never considered myself a person of color until applying to Miami, and there was a diversity initiative where they had assistantships, like funding for assistantships specifically for students of color. And so when I was applying, one of the faculty reached out to me and said, hey, we have this position. It's not listed on our website, but it's available, and it's available for students of color. And so when I got that email, I was like, what? I'm a student of color? Like, this is so strange. And so it was only then when I started to like really think about my identities and like how I show up to a space, and really start to like deconstruct that. So for me, no.
Yeah, I basically kind of the same until I was in college. And a friend, we had a NAACP chapter at Emory, like they were a student organization, and they had their end of year awards, and my friend had emailed me and was like, I want to nominate you for this award, like the Sophomore Male of the Year award for NAACP. And I was like, my first thought was like, I'm not black. And that the organization certainly historically that is why it was founded. But I think that there's equating the term, like, I mean, I know it's colored people in the acronym, not people of color, but equating that with only black, I think is something that I used to do, and that I think a lot of API students do, because they, some that I've talked to think that, like, okay, like this is, they see race relations as black and white still because of the history of it in America and because of what is on the forefront of media right now. Yeah, so it's complicated.
So this kind of reminds me of a conversation I just had last week. So in my job, I'm responsible for advising all the different student committees that program the cultural dinners. And so I oversee MLK dinner, the Cesar Chavez dinner, and the Asian Heritage dinner. And I went to the Asian student unions like kind of like their first meeting, and then they started talking about speakers and themes, and it was just so interesting to like kind of see the shift. So they basically started with saying how like we don't know what should we talk about, like we don't have any issues, like it's not like MLK dinner, like you have the civil rights, it's not like another dinner, there's a Harvey Milk dinner, but the faculty staff council does it, not me. So they're talking about like, oh, you know, you have the gay rights movement, but what about us? We don't have anything. And then I kind of took that moment and I challenged them all, and I was like, why do you think there's nothing? And then I started kind of just listing things, and they were just all kind of like, oh my God, like I've never heard of this before, aha moments. And it makes me think about how here I'm the only one. Like there's another Asian American staff, but he's not going to work here next year. And so like I'm the only other Asian American who can like support these students and teach them about like, you know, like Asian American issues. And I'm just thinking about like the lack of resources contributes to like this not this lack of awareness.
Is there an Asian or Asian American Studies program on your campus?
No, we don't even have a class. We do only because of one professor who is, I don't know if he's retired or not, but he kind of does it on a volunteer basis. So they've had it in the past on and off, but nothing consistent, no program or dedicated faculty.
And that puts a lot of pressure on you to be the educator, and that might not be, you know, all of your role. I feel fortunate where there is an Asian American Studies program. I think it's a minor right now at Miami, and so some of the students that I work with, they've taken some of those courses, so they have some history, some context, and they are able to recognize, like, you know, the connections of oppression.
Yeah, just a heavy time.
I will say, sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, I wasn't really saying anything substantial.
Okay. Just to kind of put on a positive note, though, I am excited that they are excited, and that kind of gives me a lot of like motivation to like I want to do this, even though it's not my job. It's not. It's extra hours, and so at least like there's this desire to learn. Just need more resources, especially since we're in the Midwest.
Yeah, and I think like the question becomes is like how do we ask for those resources in a time like this when
Mm,
there are, it's we never want our students to play the oppression Olympics and say that one struggle is harder than the other, but in the nation, Black lives are under attack right now, and and then if we do ask for that, is that taking away from the Black Lives Matter movement? Is that how are API students or other students entering that conversation by making their own demands in a sense, while still acknowledging that these other demands need to be met?
Yeah, that's pretty tough in terms of like balancing your needs with, trying to support others. I mean, it reminds me of part of the chapter where it was like Asian Americans have a history of being silent and not asking for things and not like seeking recognition. I feel like I struggle with that also, like trying to voice my needs and my concerns.
Mm-hmm.
and then when we do, we're often. I'm thinking about the reading now. Um, like the what was the word they use? Not like the not an exceptional one, but like the odd one out. Like you're like you're not this like you're not like the other Asians kind of thing. Um, when like we speak up and try to like kind of advocate for ourselves. I don't know if and you kind of experience that kind of like like I guess like reactions from people when Asian Americans do stand up for themselves, and how do people react? Because we're always stereotyped to be passive
Mm-hmm.
and
Like you're
quiet.
not the typical Asian.
Yeah, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think those things like students internalize that, right? And they're like, well, maybe I shouldn't speak up again.
Mm,
Um, so it's hard to break these cycles and to how to support that, right? How to support students, but then when they go somewhere else and you're not there to support them, they're shut down again.
yeah. There was a climate survey that came out, and when I looked at it, there was a question about this. Mm, Are you afraid of speaking up? And above all other racial groups, Asian Americans were the highest by far, too. It was like 40 something percent, like 40 something percent of the entire like the students like feel unsafe or like they don't feel comfortable enough to speak up. And I don't know, maybe that's part of like I wonder like what contributes to that. Is it because people don't recognize that Asian Americans are also people of color, and like um or like where does this internalization come from? And I don't know, I'm kind of just openly processing right now.
Yeah, I feel like I've just been doing a lot of processing on all of this the last couple days. It's like it's a whirlwind of processing with no real answers too. Like, yeah.
Like on one hand, if you do speak up, and then someone says, "Oh my gosh, you're like not the typical Asian," and so I kind of feel like you could use that to your advantage to be like, "Well, I'm going to be like, I want to stand out, and I'm going to be loud." And at this point, we don't have the connotation of the loud, angry Asian person, except for that blog in which, angry Asian man. But yeah. Hi, Carol.
Hi. Sorry, I just wanted to pop in.
We are kind of processing through Mizzou and what it means to be Asian in this context, internalized oppression, where we are,
Yeah.
just some light stuff.
Mhm. Is there a question that we are at right now in the list?
We kind of went away from the list and we're kind of just, processing out loud about what does it all mean.
Okay.
Do you see yourself as a person of color? If so, like when did that happen?
Oh, wow.
And do other people see Asian Americans as also people of color too, especially in like racial movements? Yeah, we talked.
Just some light questions to start you out.
Oh, wait, are you actually asking me? Like right now? Okay, I'm gonna have to think about that one. Because with everything that's been happening, it's kind of a hard question to answer.
Yeah, take it, it's okay. Just think about it.
Okay.
Yeah, we've just been processing through what we've all been processing individually, basically. It's like with everything happening, I think there's a lot of different thoughts about it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And also, like, how do we support, students to be advocates and allies and, along those lines as well.
Yeah. So what are we at the questioning phase, or did you all already process it and talk about it?
A mixture of both.
Okay. Wow, I was not expecting to jump into this kind of a conversation.
We could transition if you all want. I mean, so chapter 9 mostly actually relates a lot to what we're talking about. So I believe that was Peter's chapter. Do you want to maybe pose one of the questions?
Sure. We can go back to, I think the question that we were kind of really, like the question that we were on, talked a lot about, we were talking about Asian Americans being stereotyped, being like loyal, quiet, humble, hardworking, nice, and what does it mean to challenge these perceptions? And so I guess we can go to that question. Like, so like the author has mentioned how like Asian Americans don't fit when Asian Americans don't fit these expectations, they're ostracized as being atypical, not your usual Asian. And so like, have you ever seen this before? Like, experienced this before? Like, Asian American students, staff, or faculty trying to challenge labels, and like what happened? And then, and what do you think are some strategies for us to go about this? And this is for everyone.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's very powerful for me to see other people be like very strong and powerful individuals and like challenge those typical or those like leadership values, because I feel like for me, I think a lot of this stuff is like internalized, so I feel like I often are more like, I guess, follow those norms a lot more than I realize, and then I feel like when I see other people kind of fight against that and really advocate for themselves and um, serve as very powerful role models for like our community, I become very like motivated to do so as well. I mean, I'm still learning and trying to work on it, but I think I'm more motivated and like to know that there are people who like have such a powerful voice in the community.
So I think there's, I mean, in my own life, I think I grew up with, or in college had, people that didn't necessarily ascribe to that or did break that model and stereotype. But there's also like the interesting nuance of like when the whole like tiger mom thing happened, of like that's the other end of it, is like being too dominant or assertive or whatever words you want to describe the tiger mom archetype. Yeah, and so it's like a lose-lose situation kind of fitting these certain roles that have been cast for what it means to be a leader or assertive Asian American.
I think for me right now, like trying to like cross my identities as a leader and Asian American, it's trying to like model the way, right? To be present, especially in these advocacy times, in these allyship times, to go to events and to be present so that students can see me, can see like a grad student slash staff member like at these events, especially like Asian American students. So it's not only like certain people who are there. Trying to be present so that people know that like I support them and I support them being there as well. Yeah.
So I feel like a lot of the questions I kind of put up, we kind of touched upon. So I don't know if this is going to feel like a huge jump, but I wanted to just kind of ask everyone, like, where do you see yourself ultimately in your path in higher education and the and this like leadership ladder that we have, and what do you think would be like really powerful for you in like in that pursuit of what you want to accomplish? What would be helpful? And so going back to kind of strategies, like resources. So yeah.
I mean, I think I've always seen my path as leading to upper administration somehow. Um, and like, I don't know, I think the things I need are just like great mentors and role models. And I think, I mean, kind of tying it back into chapter 8 too, I think that's part of what APIKC provides us, is like we can see these people who, you know, I think they say every year at the meeting, like, stand on the shoulders of those who came before you, and that's like what we're doing. And like the shoulders get bigger every year because there's more and more people who are moving up and who we can see look like us and belong to our community. And I think we just need to keep advocating for that and realizing that we can hold those positions too, even though we do make up a small percent of those positions nationwide. But also, like, thinking about our students too is like, how are we fostering that in the people who will stand on our shoulders?
Yeah, for me, I would say that resonates a lot with me too. The idea of role models, seeing people who are not afraid, who are powerful, who want to challenge all these different stereotypes. I think that has had a very influential, like a big influence on me in my journey too. And so, like, I remember, I'll just share a little bit about my own journey. I remember that I was like I kind of matched a lot of these different stereotypes. Like, I was really quiet, I was hardworking, and like I tried to be nice to everyone. And I didn't really speak up. And a lot of it, like, there were a lot of different messages that were kind of like making me internalize all these things. But then I started to see other Asian American students, or learning about them in the past, how we're seeing them in like the nonprofit world, seeing how they're standing up and like trying to give a voice to the community, like trying to advocate. And so I think that was a really driving force in me wanting to go into higher ed, because I wanted to be someone who could be like that. I wanted to be someone who could really reach out to all students, but in particular the students that, I guess, kind of like myself, that just like were lost, and trying to help them find their voices. And so, like, I think that's really important. And I think about how that's a big challenge in the Midwest. And you know, we talk a lot of we mentioned this a lot in the book club, how there's not many of us. And so over time, though, hopefully like the ripples like start to grow. Um, and so I did want to ask one question, kind of a different angle, but we've kind of been talking a lot about how we can support ourselves and within the community. But what about the role of like non-AAPI professionals in our field, in supporting like the development of like this leadership pipeline? And so I just kind of want to ask you all, like, what do you think are things that they could do? Like, how can we like kind of help them become like allies or accomplices for us? Because this is, I think, going back to coalition building piece is really important.
So something that, like a phrase that I learned at NASPA, through the, I believe it was the APIKC thing, pre-conference, was like, lift as you rise, and I really love that phrase. And I think that that's something that I'm trying to do, like trying to work on in terms of like, as I move forward, also bringing others with me. But I never thought about like how like my other like colleagues and like allies could help me. I don't know what I could do. I mean, I feel like it's part of me, like things that I should be doing to help myself. So it would be like being able to speak up and letting people know that I want this help and I need this help. I think that's, for me, one of the biggest pieces of like trying to break the stereotype as well as getting help from my colleagues. So, yeah.
I think also part of it, to tie it also into maybe some of the concepts in chapter 8, was like telling our stories, because again, it's often a race identity when it comes to talking about race. There might be assumptions made by our colleagues about how we are supposed to lead or how we got to where we are, that we are this model minority. But I think in talking about our identity and telling people about our experience, or that the things we read in this book even, because we can share that with other higher ed professionals who might not know about the statistics and the struggles of the API community. And so I think even just raising that awareness in that small way of just having a conversation with someone about that will make them more aware of that in the future.
Yeah, I agree with Stephen, and I think that, making our colleagues more aware, and also just understanding the history of like Asian Americans in the US, and like all of the things that we kind of like struggle through as a community, as well as like why is it that, our voice, or our identities have been sort of erased or just invisible for so many years, and how we are trying to, really bring that forward and help us like become like, or just situate ourselves in our identities or develop into our identities, is something that we can help our colleagues understand. So maybe just helping people, raising awareness for understanding history and identity development is a conversation we can begin having in our conversations, like in passing, or in, maybe we can do like a discussion group or something within our own office or something. I don't know.
Yeah, so I just thought of something. And so one way that I'm thinking about how like allies can help is kind of, so I first started thinking about like if we're in a meeting and I were to say something, someone would back me up, for example, kind of affirm what I said, my opinion. But then I started thinking about how, what if, like, hasn't happened to me, but I've heard of them or read about it. Like, what if I bring up something and then someone else brings up something, but they get the credit? And so that helps their advancement, and not like if it were to be me, my advancement. And so like this idea of like crediting like like the people of color, marginalized communities for their work. And we kind of see this in like lots of different spaces. So that was an interesting thought that I kind of thought about. Um, yeah. Also, as a side note, when I made my Facebook status, and then I did my like I'm gonna credit this person for this idea, and then it just like blew up, and everyone was crediting each other, and I was like, this is kind of cool, but I feel overwhelmed because like I have over like 30 notifications. But, like I just thought it was kind of cool how people try to credit other people for their words and their thoughts, and how that just kind of rippled out. And so, yeah, I don't think that really was relevant, but I thought it was kind of cool.
No, I thought it was really cool too. I saw your Facebook, and it has like all the feeds of like everyone crediting you, and also Vanessa. So I thought it was cool.
So maybe we'll want to shift over to the eighth chapter since we have 15 minutes left. Because I feel like my questions are covered.
Yeah, I can pull up my questions. I mean, I guess just in general, so it was about the history and legacy and different projects in the APIKC. So I think just in the vein of like story telling and stuff. Maybe if people want to talk about their experience with APIKC, why you joined, why you came back, joined this book club, or what it's meant to you, I think would be helpful.
So I can start. I didn't know what I was doing after grad school, and when I went to NASPA, I went to a regional conference in San Diego, and there was no actual organized KC time, and so someone had said, let's just do it right now. And so they all started like gathering in one of the conference rooms. And then so someone pulled me along and said, do you identify as API, or do you want to come? And I was like, sure. And that's how I started with APIKC, and I fell in love with like what people were trying to do, and I feel like the APIKC really lives up to the like look as you guys. And I am really appreciative of that in terms of like finding mentors, finding people who are in the same like job profession, and then also like understanding in terms of like contextual, like share my same identities and same struggles. So I feel like I've found a lot of friends, things like that. And book club, I wanted to read this book, and I wanted to share it with someone and have someone hold me accountable. So that's why I was like, hey, let's do a book club. Because I feel like the book club was a big deal a few years ago when the book was a big deal when it came out, and I was always interested in reading it, but never wanted to actually sit down and read it like without it. So those are my 2 cents. And I hope. So, yeah.
So I'm gonna be a little honest and real. When I first came into student affairs, like I was like doing my grad program, and student affairs was the right thing for me because I didn't really feel connected to it, and I always felt like I didn't really understand why, or it wasn't that I didn't understand why I was here, but I just didn't really feel like connected to the community. I didn't really feel like there were people who had similar interests as me. I didn't really feel like 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 I had a support network. And when I went to NASPA last year, I didn't even know what NASPA was. and people just encouraged me to go to conference, and then people were telling me about APIKC, and they were really nice. They had all the like events and stuff created into a schedule, and I just followed that schedule as best as I could to go to as many events as I could. And I really found a community, and I really connected there because like I think just being at a PWI and just like learning what student affairs is all about, it was really, really hard for me to kind of like feel supported. And sorry, for the first time, I felt like I just had mentors and friends and peers who like understood my experiences and like I can relate to, and that's something that's really powerful that I think that APIKC provided for me that I don't feel like anything else in my work has given me yet. So I think that it is a very powerful experience, and I really appreciate the work that the KC does.
I think it's interesting that, Carol, you were in grad school, and like that's when you found like the APIKC, whereas I was still kind of like, I'm not sure what to do with my life, and that's where I found APIKC, and that's where I got the inspiration and motivation to go back to grad school. Because initially I was like, grad school is never for me. I'm okay without it. So yeah, it's cool. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you for sharing and validating.
For me, I only started discovered connected with the KC this past NASPA. Um, I went to so when I came in, I knew I wanted to connect because I kind of wanted to meet other API like professionals and since in Chicago like there's much more and like there were people, but I think at that point I was just like I want to meet more people and it hasn't and like when I actually got there it was really powerful, like it really hit me deeply because I remember feeling that sense of community, family, and I thought that was just really powerful. Like I don't know these people, I've just like this is the first time I'm meeting everyone, but I feel it so strongly. Um, and I feel like lucky to have met like a lot of people through the KC and just like overall like I guess like the philosophy that like we help each other out. And so I'm thinking about like how I've asked people like how do I navigate things as like a new professional or just like asking questions about like or like having people help me like think about next steps, and so continuing like that kind of like that leadership development. And so yeah, like I that's kind of what happened, and like I just wanted to keep getting involved and connecting. Especially now, it's like much more. Like I feel this way more now that I'm in Indiana. So, uh, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd echo a lot of what you just said, Peter. Like I think last year was like my fifth or sixth NASPA, and I remember going the first time in 2010, and I was like, okay, like yeah, this is cool. Like I just went with everyone in my cohort who was also going, but every year has just gotten better and better. Like definitely, they talk about the word ohana in the chapter, and we use that word a lot, like at the conference, and that's what I feel. And like to talk to you all once a month, like these are awesome connections. It's kind of like just being able to reconnect to that larger community that we have, um, and that's meant a lot. And just meeting some great friends, mentors, everything that Peter, what you just said about the feeling you get in that room, like that's I don't know how to describe it either, but it's just like it's kind of just there. Yeah, this like automatic sense of connection is really really great, and I appreciate that they've fostered that so much since APIKC's inception. And then I guess to transition, some of the other questions are just kind of about what the APIKC does for us. So like, I mean, I think, one thing, we all join this book club, like, so thank you, Virginia, for starting this, because that's like a great way to keep us connected within a region, especially. But what are some other things that you all maybe would like to see come out of APIKC, or things that in the past have helped you connect with others that you would want to continue seeing? I could start, but I mean, I think that the mentoring program has shifted a lot. Like, it's become more and more involved, and a larger number of people have been participating through the official mentoring program. I think that there's a lot of unofficial mentoring that happens too, of course. But I really appreciate that. The two mentors that I've had, or mentees that I've had, have been great to talk to, and just like we talk about in book club, of like fostering those who are younger than we are. That's really important to me to do through that, and so hopefully I can continue to do that. And I also I meant to last year, but I think I forgot to sign up for a mentor of my own too, through an official capacity, because I think that I kind of write that off and oh yeah, I have tons of mentors and supervisors and everything, but it'd be nice to connect to someone who I maybe haven't met either.
I think something that I would like to see, but I feel like it's challenging, is more socials, especially in the regions that don't have as many API professionals. So over the summer, I was in Northern California, and they had a Northern California. It was an APIKC and APAN from ACPA's organization, and so it was a joint thing. But it was really cool, again, just to see, to be in a space with other professionals and hear about their lives and to learn about their personal lives as well as their professional lives. So, it's always tough because these regions are huge, right? They're states wide and things like that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that piece, being able to connect and talk more, because I think what has been valuable is just helping, help processing things. And I know I mentioned this a lot, but this is my first job, coming out of grad school, learning a lot of things, being in a very PWI space that's very conservative too, and I feel like being able to have a community that can pass down their knowledge, their experiences, and their care for us, and kind of helping like me and other people to move forward in our careers. And I don't know, I know that didn't really add anything, but I just resonate with that a lot. Mm. I will say that when I first started connecting, these Google Hangouts, even though we're not in person, these helped me a lot. I remember when I first joined the new professionals and grad students webinar, it was I was oh, this is weird, is this I was kind of this is new. I don't know any of these people, and I don't really know much about the KC, but that was really helpful, and so that's why I really appreciate this book club a lot.
I'm just feeling right now oh my gosh, I can't wait to see y'all at NASPA, and I hope that y'all decide to go. I'm oh, I really want to connect and just see y'all in person.
So the plan for the book club was that we would end before the conference, so we could either get together and actually talk about the last chapter, or we can just get together and hang out in real life, hashtag in real life. So yeah, I'm very excited about that as well. So I'll be there. Hopefully see everyone else there too. And in an effort, wanted to recognize time, and I know we kind of shifted things around and talked about the Mizzou thing, and then we went to chapter 9 before we went to chapter 8. But does anyone have any final thoughts, or if anyone wants to answer the last question that Stephen had, or anything?
I'm just happy that I chimed in this time. It was a really good conversation. I liked seeing and hearing all your people. Okay, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna stop now.
Yep, just appreciative that we could unpack all that stuff too together.
Definitely agree.
Okay, so time for a picture, which I don't think I posted the last one, and I'm sorry about that. But yeah, hold on. So how about Stephen, you say something, and then so you can be in the big picture on my screen, and I will take a
Oh
picture.
gosh. Okay. So I have to look really good.
Okay, it's all done.
Cool.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you too.
Thank
See
you.
Good to
you
talk to you all.
later. Make
Bye.
sure everyone gets rest and self-care and all that.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.